They say that history is written in the stars, but this week the headlines are writing a story that we just cannot ignore. While the world focuses on politics, something historic is going to be happening in our skies. A rare planetary parade involving 6 planets will light up the skies this week. And down here on Earth, well, it's anything but silent. We're seeing earthquakes at a 7.0, and we're seeing ash plumes from volcanoes at 26,000 feet. The birth pains are not just increasing, they're accelerating. So my question for you is, are you watching the distractions or are you watching the signs? Hey everyone, it's DinaKalmeta here. And since we have a historic event happening this week, let's start with the heavens.
We are about to witness a very rare sight in the heavens. A planetary parade involving at least 6 planets is quite rare. In fact, normally there are at least a couple of decades between such events. But as the threat of a major conflict in the Middle East looms, we will get to see a planetary parade that includes Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and it's coming this week. We are being told that a planetary parade like this only happens once every few decades, and it will be visible on Saturday, but there will only be a short window of opportunity to view it, and then it will be gone. The week following the arrival of the planetary parade, there will be a blood moon eclipse on March 3rd, and a newly discovered giant comet could actually become visible during daylight hours when it has a very close encounter with the sun in early April. So is it just a coincidence that all of these signs in the sky are appearing at the exact time when we are right on the brink of an apocalyptic war with Iran? Very possible. God does use the signs in the heavens for the seasons. Are we entering a season of conflict? For now, we're just going to have to wait and see, but stay tuned for my report tomorrow, where we talk about Iran, the United States, Israel, Russia, and others. But to continue with the shakings in the heavens, let's talk about the fireballs and asteroids. And there has been a lot of fireball sightings. First up, Europe had 2 notable clusters on the 17th, 5 reports over northern Italy and Switzerland, and 15 reports across France, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. On the 18th, the skies were busy. 10 reports from Florida in the U.S., 9 reports across Denmark, Germany, and Sweden, and 19 reports across Austria, Hungary, Italy, and Slovakia. Later on the 18th, there was a West Africa event with 6 reports across Benin and Nigeria. February 19th, there was a cluster of 29 reports spanning Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. On the 20th, we saw reports from Florida and Germany. So to sum it up, we saw some big clusters in Europe, West Africa, and a strong multi-state event in the U.S. But what's going on with the space rocks, otherwise known as asteroids? On February 17th, it was a big day. We saw 2 small objects pass inside the moon's distance. First, 2026 CR2 at roughly 136,488 kilometers away. Then 2026 DB at around 214,000 kilometers away. Later that same day, we also saw 2026 DL, 2026 AJ17. And on the 18th, 2026 CU. On the 19th, 2023 CM2, 2026 CA2, 2026 DW. February 20th, 2026 CZ3, 2026 BQ8, 2026 CO, and 2026 AH17. 2026 AH17, 2025 YU15, and 2026 DY on February 21st. So what has the sun been up to? Well, it's actually been pretty quiet. There was one solar flare on February 16th, a M2.4 that was recorded, a G1 minor geomagnetic storm, again on February 23rd, a G1 minor geomagnetic storm alert on February 22nd, and that is it for this week. So the sun is pretty calm, but the moon saw an annular solar eclipse on February 17th, and it was visible over Antarctica with a partial eclipse visible from parts of South America, Africa, and the surrounding oceans. Jesus told us in Luke 21:25 that we would see signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And that's what we're watching for, and that's what we have been seeing.
As the heavens align in a rare order, the earth beneath our feet is continuing to groan. It's one thing to watch the signs in the heavens, you guys. It's something entirely different to feel the ground shaken beneath our feet. From the Solomon Islands to Malaysia to Alaska, to the volcanoes in Mexico and Hawaii, the earth is reaching a breaking point.
On the first day of Ramadan, the earth trembled beneath the ancient Shushan, modern-day Shush in Iran's Khuzestan province, the very city where the drama of Esther unfolded 2,500 years ago. A 5.5 earthquake struck the region just 10 days before Purim, the feast commemorating the reversal of Haman's genocidal decree against the Jewish people. Shushan is not a random archaeological footnote. It is the epicenter of the Purim narrative, the city where lots were cast for destruction and where God turned history upside down. That beneath this historic stronghold of Persia shook on the eve of Purim invites reflection for those who understand the patterns of Scripture. The book of Esther famously never mentions the name of God. But earthquakes, timing, political shifts all seem coincidental until viewed through the lens of the whole story. Today, Iran, or ancient Persia, openly funds and arms Israel's enemies while pursuing nuclear capabilities and regional dominance. And in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, Persia is explicitly named among the coalition that will rise against Israel in the latter days. We had a 5.8 in Afghanistan, a 5.5 in Indonesia, a 5.5 in the South Sandwich Islands, a new swarm of hybrid seismic events beneath the Teide volcano, a 5.1 in Puerto Rico, a 5.0 in West Chile Rise, and a 5.7 in Papua New Guinea. A strong and shallow 6.0 hit the Solomon Islands, a 6.0 hit the south of the Fiji Islands, a 7.1 hit beneath the Sulu Sea near Malaysia, a 6.1 hit the Fox Islands and the Aleutian Islands, Alaska. But the pressure isn't just shaking the ground, it's bursting through it. As tectonic plates grind together, we are seeing a sudden uptick in volcanic activity across the Ring of Fire. The Sangay volcano in Ecuador erupted to 21,000 feet. The Popocatépetl in Mexico erupted to 20,000 feet. The Reventador volcano in Ecuador erupted to 15,000 feet. The Semeru volcano in Indonesia erupted to 15,000 feet. The Fuego volcano in Guatemala 14,000 feet. The Marapi volcano in Indonesia, 11,000 feet. And in the Philippines, more than 30 families evacuated the La Calarto city after an explosive eruption at the Canloan volcano on February 19th. The eruption generated 6,500 ash plumes into the air. Pyroclastic density currents were 1.2 miles of the crater, and ashfall across 41 barangays in 6 cities and municipalities. So definitely a roar from that volcano. Meanwhile, continuous ash emissions from the Sambucaya volcano at 24,000 feet, and satellite monitoring confirms that the Home Reef volcano in Tonga remains active nearly 2 months after its latest eruption on December 17th. The eruption had expanded the island's surface area by nearly 20 acres, as lava flow extended its margins east, south, northwest, and north. And Kilauea's volcano in Hawaii produced one of its most intensive eruptive episodes in months on February 15th, when dual vents discharged lava at rates up to 1,000 yards and fountains rose 1,300 feet high before the activity paused. The episode released an estimated 11.4 million meters of lava and covered about half of the crater floor. The Sambucaya volcano in Peru erupted to 26,000 feet. The Ambay volcano erupted to 10,000 feet. Jesus tells us in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke that we will see earthquakes in diverse places or various places. He also tells us in the book of Joel and Acts that we will see blood and fire and pillars of smoke. And that is exactly what we are seeing with these volcanoes and earthquakes. But when the earth moves, stability falters. It's not just fire and ash. We've had sudden fatal collapses that are catching communities completely off guard. What am I talking about? 9 people have perished in a major avalanche in the Lake Tahoe area on February 17th, marking it as one of the most fatal in modern California history. The victims were part of a 15-person backcountry skiing group, including 3 guides, near Castle Peak. All 9 bodies were recovered by February 21st. Definitely a tragedy for California. Over in Switzerland, an avalanche derailed a passenger train on February 16th, injuring 5 of the 29 people on board. And in Indonesia, a large ground collapse has expanded to 7.4 acres. Monitoring data from the Resource Office show the affected area has grown about 6.9 acres in 2022 and has now reached the main road corridor. Field reports indicate that the active scarp continues to move towards farmland and residential areas, and they're only about 900 to 1,300 feet away from those areas. WorkSafe New Zealand confirmed on February 20th that it has launched a formal investigation into the January 22nd landslide that took 6 lives at the Mount Maungani Beachside Holiday Park. The investigation will examine work-related health and safety matters under the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 following the completion of police recovery operations on February 1st. The rainfall-triggered landslide struck the eastern flank, descending into the beachfront campground at the base of the lava dome. 6 people were taken when the debris buried the tents, cabins, vehicles, and campground infrastructure. And 5 fatalities due to avalanches in Austria. The most important news is reporting that for decades we were told to ignore any of the strange reports that we were hearing about Antarctica. Experts assured us that nothing unusual was going on and that there wasn't anything to be concerned about. Of course, we couldn't go investigate for ourselves because there are 72 acres of Antarctica that only those with a special permit are allowed to enter. And if you try to fly there without authorization, you will get into all sorts of trouble. So, Michael asks, why all the secrecy? What are they trying to hide from all of us? One thing that scientists are admitting is that it sits directly above the strongest gravity hole on the entire planet. The report goes on to say that Earth may look like a smooth blue marble from space, but it's better to imagine it as a slightly gnarled orange with an inside that's firm in parts but squishier in others. Since the planet isn't a perfect sphere and its internal density varies across the globe, gravitational pull changes from place to place. Where there's less mass in the underlying geology, gravity is weaker, and vice versa. These dips in the gravitational field are formally known as gravity anomalies, but they're more commonly called gravity holes. The largest is found in the middle of the Indian Ocean, spanning over 3 million square miles, while the strongest is found in Antarctica. Isn't that interesting? It turns out that there is a gigantic hole under Antarctica, but the experts are insisting that there really isn't anything particularly special about it. In fact, they try to make it sound as boring as possible. Could it be possible that there is a lot more to this than we are being told? It is being reported that the team of researchers that mapped the colossal gravity hole directly under Antarctica was able to use a combination of methods to actually reconstruct the 3-dimensional structure that exists underneath the continent. What is down there? Could some of the reports that we have heard over the years actually be true? I wouldn't hold your breath waiting for the truth to come out. Much of the continent is strictly off limits unless you have a special permit. They take security in Antarctica quite seriously. Of course, tourists can visit, but you must carefully obey the rules, and you must not wander away from the very limited areas that tourists are allowed to see. Of course, most of the good stuff is in areas where tourists are never allowed, and that includes the colossal pyramid that appears to have been man-made. The symmetry of the structure is quite striking, but even though it looks like an ancient Egyptian pyramid, the official story is that this is simply a naturally occurring structure that was shaped by erosion. According to Wikipedia, there are 72 sites that have been designated as Antarctic specially protected areas. The protected areas were established in 1961 under the Antarctic Treaty System, which governs all the land and water south of 60 latitude and protects against human development. A permit is required to even enter. The ASPA sites are protected by the governments of Australia, New Zealand, the United States, the UK, Chile, France, Argentina, Poland, Russia, Norway, Japan, India, Italy, and the Republic of Korea. There are currently 72 sites.
Very interesting. A gigantic hole underneath the Antarctic. This is actually the first time I'm hearing about this. I know I'm a little sheltered, but I have to ask the question, what is up with the secrecy? What do you guys think that they're hiding? Let me know in the comments. I really do want to hear from you. But to switch gears, let's talk about this chaotic weather that we have been seeing. From blizzards to megafires to floods, the signs are accelerating all at once.
The Philippines lost 6 people in 2 rain-induced landslides in the Davao region of southern Mindanao after days of continuous rainfall that was generated by a persistent shear line and easterly winds. And over on the East Coast, a huge blizzard brought over 20 inches of snow overnight on Sunday. Almost all flights in and out of New York City, Philadelphia, and Boston were canceled due to the severe weather, with multiple states issuing states of emergency over the devastating storm. Snow totals in New York reached over 20 inches in Long Island, with Central Park recording 15 inches and Newark, New Jersey recording 18 inches as of Monday morning. The powerful blizzard saw snow totals rapidly rise in the tri-state area by over an inch per hour on Monday morning, with all residents urged to stay inside as icy wind gusts rose to 50 miles per hour. National Guard troops have also been deployed in several states, including New York and Massachusetts, as upwards of 500,000 people have been left without power across the East Coast. The Ranger Road fire nearly doubled in size at 145,000 acres to 283 acres within 24 hours after ignition on February 17th when it crossed the Kansas-Oklahoma border. As of February 18th, containment stood at 15% following rapid expansion driven by dry fuels and high winds. At the time of this recording, the Ranger Road fire continues to grow rapidly. The fire prompted the closures of sections of Kansas Highway 283, Kansas Highway 160, and Kansas Highway 183. Mandatory evacuations were issued for the areas. Multiple other wildfires are also affecting Oklahoma, having prompted a state of emergency in 3 counties on February 18th. Now, on the other side of the world, flooding during Mozambique's 2025-2026 rainy season has taken 223 lives and has affected over 860,000 others nationwide since October 2025. Heavy rainfall, river overflows, and cyclone impacts have displaced more than 392,000 people. It destroyed thousands of homes and inundated over 1.37 million acres of agricultural land. Meanwhile, in Illinois, a confirmed tornado struck Crawford County on the evening of Thursday, February 19th, destroying a house and trapping the occupants inside. Emergency crews responded as local authorities reported significant damage to structures and power infrastructure. In Romania, a severe snowstorm hit Bucharest on February 18th after the National Meteorological Administration issued red code warnings for intense snowfall. Snow accumulation exceeded 20 inches in parts of the capital, prompting 495 emergency intervention. Meanwhile, in California, water rescues and landslides were reported as a potent Pacific storm had brought heavy snow and flooding to much of the U.S. West Coast. Over in France, France's National Flooding Monitor Service reports that the soil moisture in the country has reached its highest level since records began in 1959. The prolonged rainfall of the past 2 months intensified by Storm Nils that left the soils fully saturated and reduced infiltration capacity. Evacuations, infrastructure closures, and power outages were reported in several regions. A very sad situation in Peru with 17 fatalities confirmed after massive flooding. Tropical cyclone Hirochio becomes the strongest storm of 2026.
The earth and everything around it is being shaken right now, and it all points to the soon return of Jesus. One of the amazing things about God, there's lots of amazing things about him, but he always keeps his promises. Jesus said in the book of John that in my Father's house are many mansions. And if it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Jesus eventually is going to keep that promise, but we got to remember to keep our eyes on him. There's a lot of distractions and noise in the world right now, and the most important thing in our lives should be Jesus and his soon return, and warning people of the signs of his soon return. But with that said, those are your headlines for today. I want to hear from you guys. Are you in any of the areas I mentioned today? Let me know in the comments. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit me on my social media pages as well as my website. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.